We
I
had to
haven't
take
seen it.
like a worldview class at Liberty, and they didn't show us pictures or videos, but we spent like 2 weeks. It was like 4 or 6 classes that we spent on like going over the every horrible detail of every single abortion method from pills all the way up to,
Yeah.
clubbing toddlers like a baby seal or whatever.
Yeah,
For us, it
totally.
was they basically put. I don't know why you had scissors up there, but they would basically. I was told that it was. I mean, anything, whatever. Who cares? Whatever you
I
find.
heard this scissor thing.
And you stick it into the back of the head, and then you use the forceps to take them out in pieces. Is what I heard. Also, I just
They
remembered.
use one of those slap chops from the infomercials.
Hey, everybody, we're back with another episode of Growing Up Christian. I'm Sam.
I'm Casey.
I'm Jeremiah.
Okay, guys. So I was at the beach this weekend. I hadn't actually been able to go at all this year. So me and my wife and kids left Saturday morning, and we just got back Sunday. So we got a hotel for the night near the beach. 2 full days on the beach, and it was great. I haven't been able to go this year, and I'm a huge of the beach. The only time my wife and I ever actually talk about moving is to be within 15. Like, it would be so nice to be able to just get in the car and go and not have to like pack for a whole day and make a thing of it. So that's like our pipe dream. But a couple of things that I want to tell you guys about revolving around this weekend. One of them is just, you're going to wish people are probably going to wonder why I'm telling the story and think that they could have gone without it. But
Would you say you have sand in your craw?
yeah, in my pee hole. Never get sand in your pee hole. And that happens when you dip it directly into it's not worth it.
Yeah, fun dip.
Yeah. Okay, so we decided to we found this new person to watch our dogs. We're always trying to find someone to watch our dogs that feels like a good place for them to go, because that's kind of scary, right? If you don't know who's watching them. Rover, you guys ever use Rover? Well, Casey, you don't. Country folk people always.
I have a great kennel.
I would never get a stranger. Can't do it.
Yeah. So our friends found this dude who they just loved. So we were like, all right, we'll, and he was great. My dog has wicked bad anxiety, so he gets so fucking nervous around everything before. So the guy we found is a dog person, like dogs over people all day. I don't want to speculate, but it's not really speculation. He's definitely autistic, and it's like dog obsession, like fucking loves dogs. I think he could do without people, but that's his full-time job. He just watches dogs, and he bought a house. So this is the house that I brought my dogs to. He bought the house because it was wide open inside, and he was like, it's perfect. So his entire life revolves around this. That's what he's been doing. He loves dogs, and him and his partner watch dogs full time.
They call that a zoophile, right?
Maybe.
Okay.
But it's like X-Files, but at the zoo.
Exactly. Yeah, Google it afterwards.
But yeah, so he's relentlessly positive, right? And so my dog is a giant ball of anxiety. He's like, I love him. He has so much potential. Like all weekend, it was like, if it was from somebody who wasn't relentlessly positive and autistic, you'd be like, that's a backhanded compliment. But he's like truly finding the good in my dog. So I really appreciate it, because there's not a lot of people who can do that. My dog's just, he's out of his mind with anxiety. And the second I drove off, he said that my dog wouldn't move and just shook. So just to give you guys an idea. But anyway, funny story leading up to it. I'm like, I take my dogs in the car. We're going for a ride. You guys have all seen dogs get erections, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Normally, my dog, you get home and your dog's like, hey, I'm excited to see you. And it comes out like half an inch, like that little red rocket, just pokes its head out. I legitimately was concerned bringing my dog to this guy, because I get him in the car. He's sitting in the front seat like a person, like his legs straight out and paws in front. and my dog is fully fucking torqued. Like it's out 4 inches. And
you think he could have popped the airbag?
Yeah. He's just looking at me the whole time, and then he looks out the front window and then looks back at me, and I'm looking at him and then looking at his little doggy dick. Do I have to go to the vet? Like, I thought it was stuck. I thought something was wrong because it's never happened like that, and it's never happened for the entire car ride. The whole time. It was like a 10-minute car ride. He just sat in the front seat fully around. And
well, like dogs, what, one dog or one person year is 7 dog years, right?
Okay.
So I don't know how to do the math, but like it seems like that's probably counts as an erection lasting longer than 4 hours.
He
like
found my
should have called the vet.
Is that what you're saying?
You're right.
Yeah, I was actually, I swear to God, it's not even a joke. I was like, if this doesn't go down by the time I get there, I might actually have to call the vet. And I don't know anything about that for dogs. Maybe that's an irrational fear.
You're very sensitive to it.
I've never seen it before. It was wild. And you could not notice it. It was like I had to like swat it out of my way while I'm fucking driving.
There's no other option.
And the second we pull in, dude, we pull into a place that he's never seen before. It just sucked back into his body. Done. And he was on edge all weekend. And the guy was so great. He texted my wife all weekend, was like, I'm taking him for a walk, taking him out by himself so he feels a little more safe. Like
taking him on a car ride. He's really excited.
Yeah. But the guy went above and beyond. He's definitely gonna like. I want him to keep watching the dog. I want to like bring him around there more because I want him to just feel safe and comfortable there. But it's finding it's tough because that's just how he is. But anyway, moving on. Here's another story. This is something I have. Do you guys have stuff that you just get irrationally angry about, where you know it's not that big of a deal, but consistently? Yeah. You will always find yourself angry.
I have 2 things. I have, if I hit my head on something, like instantly turned up to 11, or if someone like makes a comment about the way I'm dressed. I think that's Christian school holdout, but like somebody makes a snarky comment about like oh, you wore jeans, huh? I just like, so you didn't. Oh, it dialed up. I hate it so much. It makes me furious.
So you don't want me to point out your jorts anymore? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I'm proud of the jorts.
Dude, one of mine is if I don't have wireless headphones or Bluetooth headphones and like you move and the wire snags on something and the earbuds rip out of your ears. Oh, that makes me so mad.
That's very irritating.
Mine's when I have a wrench or a socket and it's hard to reach, but like it's in a tight area and my big gorilla hands won't fit in there, and I'm trying to like do dainty work and I can't feel it. And it's hot outside and like you got oil all over your hand. You're just and then you drop whatever it is, and then you have to like go fish it out from under the car, and it takes 3 hours. That's where I'm just sometimes the best thing about the garage, I can just stand up, wash my hands, shut the garage door, walk inside. I'm like, tomorrow's problem, next weekend's problem, doesn't matter.
Buying a new 10 millimeter.
Yeah.
Wait, you're flexing on me, dude, because that's true masculine things that I have zero experience with. So
losing your temper over a non-urgent small mechanical issue, yeah, your masculinity.
Oh yeah, that's what it is to be a man, right? That's the problem these days is men can't get angry anymore, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay,
somebody's been caught up on their Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, so mine is when you go to the beach and somebody is just play. Honestly, if they're just playing music and I can hear it, I want to fucking beat the shit out of somebody. It makes me furious. I want to smash their blue. It makes me so mad because I don't say anything, which makes me more mad that I just don't have it in me to go over there and say something. But it's like, you showed up to this public space and you think you fucking own it, and you get to play music loud enough for everyone. Not only that, it's shitty music. It's like just typical pop ass country. And
is that that's what they were playing the whole time?
Sometimes it's just like, it could be anything. It could just be like your radio rap station. And I would generally not be bothered by that if I was like sitting in a waiting room and that's what was on. But when I go to the beach and somebody's playing their music, or worse, someone to your left and to your right are playing music, and you're just right in the middle of it, and you can kind of hear a little bit of what both of them are listening to, and it's just blending at your space.
Oh yeah.
It's
Yeah.
It's infuriating.
Every shop that I go into, there's like dueling radios going on from both sides of the shop, and there's usually one that's got some sort of country station on, and then the other one, it could be rap, it could be like radio metal, like Five Finger Death Punch or something like that. Skillet pops up a lot in car dealership shops. That
because it's on the like Breaking Benjamin type radio station, right? Like it's got a little bit of an edge to it, so you're not listening to stuff, but it's very radio friendly.
Makes me feel edgy.
He's ready to go break something.
So that was what they were playing today, was radio country.
Yeah, and it was, look, if it's at a low enough volume, if I can hear it a little bit, but it's low and it's not disruptive, that whatever. I will give that a pass. I'm not that much of a psychopath, but when it's just, when it's too loud, it's like, especially I got there early. So whoever got there was there earlier than me. And I kind of get it, right? You're the first ones on the beach, you're playing your music, whatever. But it starts getting crowded, and it's like, just because you were there first doesn't mean you own the beach, dumb. And then people show up at like 2:00. They just park it right like 10 feet from me, lay out their towels, whip out their Bluetooth speaker, and just blast tunes right next to me. It's like, what are you fucking doing? Why would you do that? How, like, you live in a world where you're the only fucking person in it. Oh my God. It makes me so angry.
I made this playlist for everybody.
So if you're listening and you actually do that, God, so many people want to fucking bury your face in the sand and watch you slowly suffocate. You're not a good person.
Wow. I would quit way earlier than that. Like, my thing is, like, you were close enough to other people in public that you could hear their music. Like, why? Why would you?
Yeah, that's kind of that's the brand of lunatic that I am too. Like, if we go to the beach and there's people there, then we just like walk until there's no more people, and then we sit in a pile of seaweed.
Yeah. You're literally out in the middle of the ocean and you can still hear it coming in over the waves.
Just so you can be as far away as possible. That's the only goal.
There's so many people that do it. I think it's just strange. Again, if it's low enough, I really don't get that irritated.
I still don't like it. They can't be alone, like, with their thoughts in nature for 10 minutes.
Like, you need that. You can't go to the beach and not listen to the same music you've probably heard every day for the past year, because that's what's playing. I hear that all the time. I don't even choose to listen to it, and I still know what that music is because that's what's always on the fucking radio everywhere you go. And you need that in that space right there with everyone else around. You think they love this too. Oh yeah, I fucking love that song from the Red Hot Chili Peppers that came out in 1997. That's what I want to listen to right now.
Oh man. Well, yeah, I have sympathy for that.
All right. I have one more thing I'm going to say. We don't have to dwell on it, but I thought it was funny because maybe times have changed, or you just noticed some thong bikinis are like big time common now. I only noticed that this weekend for the first time today. But what stuck out to me about it was, whatever, people wear whatever the fuck you want to do. I talked about wishing I could wear Speedos, self-confidence. But what I thought was funny about it was today my daughter was, and she's 6. She's like, there's a lot of people wearing bathing suits that show all of their butt cheeks. And you're like, yeah, I guess so. You're like, all right. She's like, why? I was like, I guess some people like that. She's like, huh. And then she's like, asked my wife, she's like, do you? She's like, no. Oh. And that was the end of the conversation, but she noticed it and she thought it was funny. And I think it's just funny to hear a 6-year-old say the word butt cheek.
That is great. Okay. So, we've been kicking around the idea for a little while of doing some kind of like jumping into some Bible stories, because, I feel like at one point in time, I remember I did like quiz bowl and stuff at my school, and we do those international competitions, and we were pretty good at it. Like, I feel like I had the Bible pretty down packed, like the chronological story and some of the details and characters and things like. I feel like I always assume that I retain information really well until I'm confronted with literally anything that wasn't something that happened in the past 5 years and I can't remember anything about it. So,
Yeah,
like,
dude, how many times have you heard something like 2 weeks ago and you're like, "Oh, I remember that," and the opportunity comes up to share that information with somebody, and the second you start talking, you're like, "I sound like a fucking idiot right now. I have
Your
absolutely
brain's
no
like, yeah,
idea."
sorry, we didn't have that. We didn't have
Yeah.
that.
You're like, "Oh, this is a perfect opportunity to bring out all that information I just learned," and then you say it, and you're like, "This sounds
Your brain's like,
absolutely
I think this content
unhinged."
may have moved.
Yeah.
well, so the Bible, like, the more I like poked around on YouTube and stuff and like listened to some Bible stories from literally the most annoying people on YouTube. It's just like obnoxious pastors that wish they had a following. But
Oof.
I don't remember a lot of these, or I recall some stuff about it, but I don't remember the details. And I heard one the other day about a guy named Phineas, which is a wild story. I was planning on talking about that one, but in doing some background research on Phineas, I bumped into the story of Balaam and his talking donkey.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Classic.
And this story, like, it was a weird story even when you were a kid, you know, talking donkey and whatnot. But this story is insane. Like, like God really comes across as a schizophrenic in this story in a lot of ways. And it's hilarious to listen. Like, you could just go from like megachurch pastor to megachurch pastor on YouTube listening to them tell the story in what they feel is the most compelling way. And like the rationalizations and like two-stepping around inconvenient parts of the story to make it all make sense and not contradict itself
Dude,
is super funny.
how many of them had a joke about, if God can make an ass talk, I guess he can make something about that. I feel like I've heard that joke so many times in my life when referring to the story about God can talk through an ass. I guess he can talk through me. And you're like, oh, God damn.
Well, okay, so to set up this story, the Israelites are kind of like coming out of the wilderness, and they're traveling to the plains of Moab, right?
Is that water rock still following them?
I think so. Let's assume so.
Like their pet rock, it just like spews out water.
Well, so they're camping on the banks of the Jordan River, across from Jericho, and the local like Midianite king, his name is Balak, which is really close to Balaam, and sometimes that makes it confusing. So I don't know, maybe we just call him Belak. But so Balak looks over his fence and sees this like just enormous group of people camped out outside of his city, right? I was trying to think about this in like terms of like all of these history podcasts that I've listened to about ancient civilizations and stuff, and like when a horde shows up, tends to not fare well for anyone that already lives in a place.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's imagine they are a totally peaceful horde, right? It's a horde of hippies that are all following like non-aggression principle. This is like a best case scenario horde. The horde is still going to hit that place like a swarm of locusts, right? They're just going to like eat and drink everything and just leave the place barren for whoever lives there. And
that's one thing you don't think too much about, I guess, when you read that story, is like the locations they went and what they were eating. Was God still providing manna at that time?
I think
was that post manna?
So.
Okay,
good thing there was no gluten-free people.
Yeah, sorry if you have celiac disease. I guess you're not welcome into the promised land.
We didn't start developing that until they started putting all the chemicals in the water.
Yeah,
you're not ready to talk about that anyway. Keep going.
Until the Clintons started spraying stuff from the airplanes. So, Belak,
Roundup,
the Midianite king, is upset, very concerned, not sure what to do about this, and apparently like rumors are reaching him that these guys have kind of like mowed over whoever was in their way, just conquered peoples and took their land and whatnot, right? So he's in a
Classic
tizzy.
pillaging.
Dude, listening to people tell this story on like these pastors tell the story, they make Belek out to be like this petulant, whiny baby that just doesn't get his way. And they kind of do that with Balaam too. But both of these two, they're kind of like, oh, whiny Belek. Oh, they didn't want to curse Israel. Blah, 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 blah. It's like there's a murderous horde at his gates that's threatening to wipe out his entire civilization.
So Belek's the guy who sees the horde of Israelites coming his way, and
he's
concerned.
The king.
Ironically, I'm sure if they found at least one homeless encampment outside of like their land, they would freak the fuck out. Like they probably have a bunch of guns to protect their property and their family. And if anyone came near it, they'd fucking raise hell. But then they tell this story and they're like, man, he's a sad boy. You're like, okay.
They just layer every rock in those pigeon pokers. So he's upset, not sure what to do, right? And there's a lot of them. He doesn't think he's got a shot at beating them. So in his in trying to figure out what to do, the most logical response is to summon a wizard from 450 miles away.
Well, that you just send a quick message, have him pop over.
Yeah.
Hopefully the horde's not in a hurry, because I imagine it takes a little while.
Everything took a lot longer back then. You read any history book about like, all right, then we settled in for 6 years of a siege. Like, cool.
I know.
It takes a long time for people to eat their children.
I know. War of attrition, dude. You think people are going to just, slaughter their dogs overnight?
Well, so he sends a messenger to this guy Balaam, who's like he's like a witch doctor, prophet, priest, something. He's not an Israelite. He's in a faraway land. Like, I don't know for sure. One of the pastors that I watched said that he's like 450 miles away from Midian here.
And why are they reaching out to this guy? What's his street cred?
He's a renowned sorcerer and seer. So the guy's whole plan for defending his land comes down to like, maybe Merlin can cast a spell on this giant swarm of people.
Okay.
He was a good king.
Is he like Oh, I wanted to make a Lord of the Rings reference. And speaking of thinking you have information in your brain and then realizing you don't when you go to speak.
You're right.
Thinking about the King of Rohan.
Radagast the Brown. What's the wizard? Who's the person in Lord of the Rings that just fucking lives in the woods and does his own shit and never shows up to act?
The Hobbit?
Is that the Hobbit?
No, I'm asking you. Is it from the movie The Hobbit?
I thought it was
the Brown was from The Hobbit. Are you thinking the elves?
I don't know. No, not the elves. It was definitely like a wizard, and maybe someone turns into an animal. It could be the Fellowship of the Ring.
I think you're thinking of Radagast from The Hobbit, where they've got like
he never helps with the real war. He doesn't show up later. Lord of the Rings fans are going to hate me for this.
I am a Lord of the Rings fan, and I'm not really sure who you're talking about. I think it might be Radagast.
You're more of a Narnia boy, Sam.
Yeah.
So they send these elders to see Balaam, and basically they want to pay him to come back and curse the Israelites, right? So that might make them easier to beat and back.
What curse?
So, it doesn't get specific about curses. It does seem to put a lot of stock in them, though. God goes way out of his way to make sure that no curses get cast.
Okay. I mean, if I was going to what curse? What would be, if you had to be specific about it? What's the curse that you would choose? Make an army easier to. So you can't go quite to kill them all. Like, I wish that they'd all be dead. So you need a curse that's going to maim them in some way, make them less effective. What's your go-to? Because have one off the top of your head.
Poison their water.
That's not a curse.
Oh, turn their hands into pumpkins. Yeah.
Okay.
Turn their hands into pumpkins. Good one. You'd make a great wizard. You gotta think out of the box.
There we go.
Sorry, I was going for effective. I forgot we're getting a witch to curse them. Sorry.
It could be something like everyone's urethras are completely blocked. That curse would be really shitty.
Really on the sand in the
Yeah, well, it came up earlier.
He's just thinking about his dog. So Balaam also seems to have, even though he's a witch doctor or whatever, he does seem to have a direct link to the one true God. They chat. So he says, "Hey, I'll ask God. I'll see what he says." And God says, "Do not go with them. You must not put a curse on those people because they are blessed." The next morning, Balaam got up and said to Balak's officials, "Go back to your own country, for the Lord has refused to let me go with you." So they travel all the way back, long journey, tell the king Balaam refused to
Bummer.
come. He said, no, that doesn't work for me. He then sends like some more prestigious officials with a lot more money to go summon Balaam.
So, all right. So we've done a 450-mile trip there. 400. We're on the third. So we're on what year?
Yeah,
How
we're
many
at
years into this history?
1350.
Okay.
It's a lot of miles.
And they're just, decided that the best way to get this crazy person in the woods to do what they want is to bring him more money. That thing
Yeah.
he probably doesn't use anywhere.
Send people in bigger hats.
Okay.
Now, it does seem that Balaam liked money, because that seems to be the criticism that's thrown at him a lot in Scripture.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Being 450 miles from civilization, I wouldn't necessarily expect him to utilize it that often.
Well, from their civilization.
Yeah, I think he was in another city.
Just theirs. Okay.
Yeah, be
my
reasonable.
mistake. Sorry.
So the second round of officials get to him. They said, Belak, son of Zippor, says, "Do not let anything keep you from coming to me, because I will reward you handsomely and do whatever you say. Come and put a curse on these people for me." But Balaam answered, "Even if Belak gave me all the silver and gold in his palace, I could not do anything great or small to go beyond the command of the Lord my God. Now spend the night here so that I can find out what else the Lord will." So far, I don't know, Balaam seems to be doing a good job, right? He's at least following directions.
He also has some Adam Sandler, "Will you sleep on my couch?" vibes going right there.
Right? Well, here's where things turn sideways. That night, God came to Balaam and said, "Since these men have come to summon you, go with them, but do only what I tell you." All right? So God has seemingly changed his mind. He's fickle,
As
though.
the Lord doeth from time to time.
Very frequently at this time, Balaam got up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went with the Moabite officials. But God was very angry when he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him.
Okay,
So
go do
this
this,
is where
and then you do it, and now he's mad. I got it. No, that makes
this
sense.
is where the pastoral footwork really comes into play.
Oh, I'm sure they slayed it.
So they saw, okay, so the general consensus seems to be like, church, when your kids, when they'll come and ask you a question, and your first question ought to be, "Have you already asked your mom this question?" You know how kids do that? They don't like to be told no, right? And they'll ask again to try to get a different answer. And that's a little bit what we're seeing from Balaam here. So it's kind of like that. There was one that took it back
Cool.
to the
That's
original
not
Hebrew.
in the story, so that's cool.
My favorite move when you run into a tough passage is to be like, now, if we look back at the original Hebrew, or if we look back at the original Greek, so there was some of that action going on where they were like, Hebrew has two words for the term went. One means to go physically and mentally. One means to go physically, but not mentally. And that's what we see here. Balaam was just a little too excited to do what the king's wise men wanted him to do. So he did what he was told, but apparently he had a crappy attitude about it.
We can't have that. We can't have people with bad attitudes doing the Lord's work. He's never allowed that to happen.
No. And so he figures, I guess I'll kill him.
God figures to kill him?
Yeah. Or at
Okay.
least it seems that way. So he puts the angel of the Lord in his path, right? And he's standing there with a big sword and supposedly was going to just cut him to ribbons like when he passed him. But, didn't want to do a lot of walking ahead of time. So what happens is Balaam's on his donkey, right? He's got 2 servants with him. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand, it turned off the road into a field. Balaam beat him to get him back on the road. So donkey takes off under your feet, like out into the field, and he just like donkey punches him and draws him back onto the road. So the angel of the Lord was thwarted by the donkey. He decides to stand in a narrow path through the vineyards with walls on both sides. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it pressed close to the wall, crushing Balaam's foot against it. So he decked him again. So
As one would do. As what would you expect? Don't tell Peter this story. They might not appreciate the Lord so.
yeah, I feel like there's a little like contradiction here. Like spare the rod, spoil the donkey. You know what I mean? Like,
It's true.
was it a loving correction? Was he directing him in wisdom? I don't know. Then the angel of the Lord moved on ahead and stood in a narrow place where there was no room to turn, either to the left or to the right. So that's different than having walls on both sides. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it lay down under Balaam, and he was angry and beat it with his staff. The dude he'll lay paws on people. Then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth and it said to Balaam, "What have I done to make you beat me these 3 times?" This is usually where the pastor inserts a Shrek reference.
Oh my God. Yeah, that makes sense.
And they make a big deal out of this. It says, Balaam answered the donkey, "You have made a fool of me. If only I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now."
Wow.
And they're like, "This guy is so lost in his own wisdom, in his anger. He just answers a donkey as if it's a person. He doesn't even faze him that the donkey's talking to him." So, a valid point. I don't know. So the donkey said to Balaam, "Am I not your own donkey, which you have always ridden to this day? Have I been in the habit of doing this to you?" "No," he said. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn. So he bowed low and fell face down. So, as it turns out, the donkey had saved him from the angel of decapitation 3 times, and all he got for it was punched in the face.
And then the angel was like, "Well, 3rd time's the charm," and he was gone. Like, what happened?
No, he appeared to Balaam like he figured his plan had been thwarted 3 times, and so he's like, "I guess I'll just show him my giant sword to let him know that we're not happy."
Yeah. Fool again.
Like, is there a better way? Like, could you just tell him?
It's
Couldn't
like,
you just be like, "Hey, I don't like your attitude. Go with him, but, don't smile."
Yeah. It's mind games. God is definitely like that. Just
Well, fact check me. All right, fact check me. So, Balaam's not going to heaven, right? Like on his current path that he's on, he's not going to heaven.
He kind of gets
nobody
cursed.
who died before Jesus is going to heaven.
Okay, so what's the long-term play of leaving him alive? Like, if the angels interfered, why did I just go down and like take his brainstem and go, just be like, all right, problem
Look,
solved?
It's
like ends up in the same place.
And then we wouldn't have this rich story by which to organize your Wednesday.
What are you supposed to learn from this? Sorry.
No, I just want to know, is the Cliff Notes version of this basically Balaam's like, God goes, "Go ahead, go for it, Balaam." Balaam's like, "All right, God, I'll do it." He goes to do it. God's like, "No way, no fucking way." Puts an angel in his, and then to avoid that angel, God's like, "Look, I do want him to do it, but I can't go back on the angel thing." So the angel's there. There's no take backs. He's on angels with swords doing shit. We're just going to have the donkey veer off the way because angels, I don't know if a lot of people know this about angels, they are bound to paths. They can't fucking deviate from routes very good. So the donkey just shifts 3 times, gets the shit kicked out of him. And then after that, God talks to Balaam through the donkey and is just like, "Bitch, why the fuck you hitting me so much?" So then Balaam's like, "Oh, sorry, my bad." And then the donkey shows him the angel that's trying to kill him because God sent it, and then says, "I'm the donkey that's trying to save you from the angel that God sent to kill you." And then the angel's like, I guess you win. I don't know how the scoring system works, but here's my sword. Carry on. That's the story.
Well, that's a
Am I
good
getting that right?
summary. So the angel of the Lord asked him, "Why have you beaten your donkey these 3 times? I have come here to oppose you because your path is a reckless one before me. The donkey saw me and turned away from me these 3 times. If it had not turned away, I would certainly have killed you by now, but I would have spared it."
Why?
So
Again, what?
again, the angel's like, "Why are you punching your donkey? Just get wrecked already." At
That's
the
a good
one
one.
pastor that I listened to, the original Hebrew fella, he also made a point to realize, like, he talked a lot about how ironic this whole story was. It's just laced with irony. And he goes, when you look back at the original Hebrew and it talks about the donkey, what we find is this is a female donkey. So a female donkey is telling male Balaam, is asking him, "Why are you hitting me? I'm trying to save your life."
Oh, come on.
Dude, I'm serious.
The
It's like,
pastor actually went in that direction.
yeah, I guess I don't know. He did make a point of that in his video. I can't remember what the name of the church was, but it's one of those franchise McDonald's churches.
Church of the franchise, the Holy Spirit.
So Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, "I have sinned. I did not realize you were standing in the road to oppose me. Now, if you are displeased, I'll go back." Just kind of like, "Hey, I'm sorry. I thought we were good. If this isn't cool, I'll go back. But you said I should come. I'm willing to do whatever you want. Just don't lop my head off, please. Where should I go from here?"
Yeah, make it a little more obvious. This is a little cryptic. Lots of mixed signals. Maybe
Very
it's like,
passive
I'll
aggressive.
go home. I have no stake in this. I will just go home.
I think it was one of those things where it's like God was kind of like, "Well, I mean, go if you want to go. That's fine. No, that's fine." Just knowing he's going to murder him in the morning. So all of this transpires, right? Balaam learns a valuable lesson. He's at that point where he's ready to surrender to God completely, to his will, and to do right. The angel of the Lord said to Balaam, "Go with the men, but speak only what I tell you."
Which is what he was trying to do the whole time.
This is what they said in the first place. Like, it makes no sense. It makes no sense. It's just like he's messing with him just for the heck of it. Like, it's just fun for God to like poke and prod at people and see if they can like dodge his mouse traps.
Like, what is the lesson that you're supposed to learn? Like, not what is that pastor adding on to it, but like, is there even supposed to be a point, or is it just like a non sequitur about this wizard that God screws with on his trip? Like,
it's look, if you're married to a donkey and that donkey is a woman, which it should be, don't beat it. That's what the pastors are trying to get across.
Is God getting paid by the word?
Yeah,
I mean, I would support that message.
He is.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, every one of the pastors that you watch tell this story, it's like they go to such great lengths to find some sort of like greater narrative in it, and it usually comes down to like Balaam loved money. He loved money so much he was willing to go and curse the children of Israel. It's like, well, I mean, yeah, they were going to pay him, but God told him to go. It seems to me like he did a pretty good job throughout most of this.
What happens to Balaam after this? Is there any more Balaam in the Bible?
Yeah, so he pops up a few more times, but the rest of this story, I'll give you the condensed version. Okay. So he shows up, and the king is like, "Hey, good to see you. Are you ready to do some cursing?" And Balaam's he's like, "Well,
you never believe what happened to me."
I wonder if he even brought it up.
I was totally going to come curse these guys. Okay, 100%. I was going to curse them, but you don't understand.
Yeah, he literally like gets to the place. The guy's like, "Let's curse." So he takes him up to like a high place where he can see the edge of the borders, and the whole time Balaam's kind of like, "Well, I'll do whatever God tells me. I can only do what God tells me, right?" So he takes him up and shows him the Israelite camp from far away at this high place, and Balaam's like, "Okay, well, build me 7 altars. I need 7, I think it was like 7 rams and 7 bulls, right? So they sacrifice all of these animals. He leaves Belak sitting there with the sacrifice to go talk to God, and then comes back and basically just tells him like how cool Israel is, right? Just goes on and on about how great they are and how successful and wonderful they are and how blessed they are and blah, blah, blah.
Sounds like very Donald Trump language.
It was, yeah.
Very successful. I really like these people.
And Belek's like, I paid you to come here and curse them, and you've blessed them. So why? What's that? And he's like, apparently Belek's like, let's try again. So he takes him to a second spot. Same thing plays out, right? Builds 7 altars, sacrifices another 7 sheep and 7 oxen, and goes and talks to God, comes back and does the exact same thing, just like extols the virtue of Israel.
Fuck, I accidentally blessed him again. Sorry, dude, my bad.
The second time that he does, like each time it's got a little speech that he came back and gave to Belak that was from God.
The king's like, dude, you had like 4.5 stars on Google reviews. Why are you this bad?
So the second half of this second speech is like, how can I denounce those whom the Lord has not denounced? From the rocky peaks I see them. From the heights I view them. I see a people who live apart and who do not consider themselves one of the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob or number even a fourth of Israel? Let me die the death of the righteous, and may my final end be like theirs.
Okay, you gonna do it or not?
Right. He's just begging to get his head cut off now. But this basically happens 3 times. They do the exact same dance 3 times in 3 different high spots. And finally, Belak's like, just don't bless them or curse them. Just neither. Can we just call this whole thing? Let's just part ways, go our separate directions. And that's it. Yeah, that's the whole section of this story. Now, there's some other, like Balaam apparently gets a little sneakier, which is a whole another interesting chapter in this whole debacle.
Maybe that should be round 2. We revisit his sneaky, what kind of conniving lunatic he is.
Because that's where our zealous, stalwart man of God Phineas comes in.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh,
he's a champ.
This is about Phineas. Okay.
Yeah, this is originally about Phineas, and then you got sidebarred with
Phineas is over the top guy.
Come back with let's do Phineas next week, and let's carry this story on.
Yes. So, what lessons can we deduce from the story of Balaam, wicked Balaam, and his wonderful donkey?
Higher low.
That's pretty good. I like that.
I think that's it. I don't know where to go from there. That's solid advice.
If in doubt about what God wants you to do, maybe just chop your own head off.
Maybe just
save yourself some stress.
That's a call to apathy. Like, just don't fucking get involved. Just chill, dude.
To hire you for a job, and they're like, "We need you to come back with us 450 miles." Like, didn't you guys come like 8 years ago? And they're like, "Yes." However, we're back. Like, this is a third of my career has been traveling back and forth to bring you these messages. Will you please come with us? And his wife's like, "How long are you gonna be, honey?" He's like, "I don't know, 4 or 5 years maybe." Like, how good does that job have to pay before you're like, "Yeah, I'll give up"?
Yeah. Imagine going back the first time with nothing to show for it. Like 6 years go by. Like, so where is he? Like, yeah, he said no. They're like, what? No. Sorry, you need to go back right now. That's not okay. You're like,
good thing most people like to camp.
And they like recount what they told him. He's like, "That's not what I said." "Oh, you had so much time to practice it on the way over." "All right, I'm going to write it down this time. Go back and do it proper."
Oh, yes. Wonderful story. Can't wait for part 2.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that to us, Casey. I'm excited for part 2. All right. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest because we're a little bit in this. And I think it's time to, as I just said, Amy Miller. Oh my God. This conversation was possibly the most we laughed in a conversation with a guest. She's a stand-up comedian. She's got special on YouTube. She's got a new album out as of recent. And as we get into talking about here, she recently opened an arena show, a couple of arena shows for Tom Segura in front of thousands of people. I think she said anything crazy like that.
Tommy Buns.
Yeah, fucking wild. And we talk about some of the jokes that she wants to get into, and that she wanted to use but wasn't sure. She did email us afterwards and said, by the way, I did end up, if you must know, I did end up trying those jokes out and they fucking landed. So she's hilarious. I will throw a bit of a trigger warning on here. I think we do talk, we talk and joke a little bit about molesty youth pastors. So if that's going to not be funny to you, there's probably a good 15 minutes of this conversation be troublesome. But anyway, I guess with all that said, enjoy our conversation with Amy Miller. Hey everybody, we're back with our guest, Amy Miller. Amy, what's up?
What's up? I just got a crisp, cool Diet Coke from the vending machine. Couldn't be better.
Those are kind of the best. Vending
I used to travel a lot for work, and like sometimes there's just nothing better than like getting a Diet Coke out of the machine and knowing that you don't have to talk to anyone for like the next 6 hours.
Oh yeah, and guess what? Well, I have to talk to you guys, but guess what? This machine spit out 2.
No way. Really?
God, look at God, you know? I think my top is definitely always going to be a McDonald's Coke or Diet Coke, but like, yeah, second best. There are some days at hotels where I just am like, I don't need to eat just because I don't want to deal with a person. So if there's like a vending machine with like even cheese and crackers, I'm like, that I'll be good till 8 p.m. on that probably.
The decision you always regret is ordering from like the hotel restaurant. Like,
oh,
$30 on a cheeseburger, and it's got those big, gross, doughy fries with it, and it's always dry. And every time you regret it.
Have never regretted that decision. But I'm also, again, it's like you don't have to go anywhere. Because even with like, Uber Eats and stuff now, since COVID, a lot of the time you still have to go downstairs. So it's like a hotel room service is the only thing coming to your door. But I don't go too crazy. I'm not getting like chicken cordon bleu or whatever. Like it is always a cheeseburger and it's fine. It's like I haven't met a cheeseburger that I like absolutely hated. They're mostly fine. And then
That's
couple are really good.
That's exactly it.
It's true.
Like barbecue.
You can always settle for one of those, and it's usually going to pass. Although, no, okay, cheeseburger story. I lived in Virginia for a little while, and when I lived in Virginia, I would occasionally go to Sonic, and I know my tastes were not what they are now, but also like it was fine. Like my memories of it should have carried over better than they did when I just went to a Sonic on my way down to North Carolina recently, because like the burger was the bread was completely stale, like not just a little bit of crust on the top, like it was like chewy. It was hard to eat, and the burger itself was like really crispy around the edges and super dry. Like you couldn't eat it. My kids all got cheeseburgers. Normally that's one of the only things they'll eat, and they were all just like, we can't do this.
That's so funny you said that, because it was literally the last like really, really terrible fast food I had was Sonic. They're
It's
just
awful.
a whole business riding on their drinks. Like I've never even heard of that. Like it might as well be Margaritaville. Also terrible food, great drinks.
Because I got popcorn chicken, and instead of getting 8 actual pieces of chicken, I got like the crumbs at the bottom of the fry later that don't actually have any chicken in them, and it was just like swimming in a tub of barbecue sauce. It was like you had to eat it with a spoon. It was like soup, really.
So you guys will appreciate this, but when we didn't get Sonic in California for a really long time, we were like the last to get it. But when I was in high school, my sister, who's 2 years older than me, had already left to go to Bible college in Oklahoma.
Beautiful.
And so when I went to visit her, it was like she couldn't stop talking about this place, Sonic. Like, oh, like the lemonades are so good. And I was like so pumped to go. And I'd never been to Oklahoma before. Oh, that's not true, because I'd been for a family reunion, of course. So like go down there to visit my sister at Bible college, and I'm just like so pumped to have this amazing fast food, and it was bad then. And I was like, I hope this never comes to California. But again, the beverages, great. Love them.
Yeah.
Very
You
good.
need
what
to
brought me back.
morph like Sonic drinks and Whataburger food into like
Mm,
fast food Megazord, and it would destroy all the other chains.
that's true. That would be good.
I live in Massachusetts now, and we would have commercials for Sonic, but there's only one in the whole state, so it was like it wasn't a destination point, but you see commercials for it all the time. You're like, should we try to go to it? Maybe we should do that this weekend. And you never do, but it is. My other memory of Sonic is there was a YouTube video years ago with a guy who sang his Sonic drive-through order, and it's very pleasurable.
I just felt so bad for my sister because I'm like, you can't have sex or drink in college. You live in a terrible place. Sorry to everyone who lives in Oklahoma City. But by the way, this was like the late 90s, early 2000s. So there's rampant hurricanes, and then you're eating this trash food. Like, are you okay?
It's like
Yeah.
if you don't
Tornadoes,
drink
sorry.
and you don't have sex, your entire reward system for yourself becomes food, and even that sucks.
Yes. And it's just, and it's not college. And you already eat bad food in college. So it's just like, and then she's always having to like go down to some bunker and hide from a tornado. I'm just like, no, I can't. The lemonade is not saving this experience.
Yeah, sloppy seconds means something totally different to kids in Bible college.
It's a sloppy Joe.
Yeah, it's just leftover Sonic. It's we were at Liberty University, so we know all about Bible Christian college.
Oh, wow. Where is that again?
That's in Virginia. That's where I
Lynchburg,
live.
Virginia.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, but it's a fairly big one.
Yeah. So supposedly it's the biggest. That's what they say on all their brochures.
Yeah, so she went to Hillsdale, which was not even accredited at the time. Well, it would flip back and forth, like be accredited one year and then not the next. And she's like, I'm double majoring. And I'm like, you're saying nothing. Like, this is, you're not.
That's a coin toss right there. Like, will we be accredited by the time I graduate? I don't know.
Yeah, because I think we couldn't afford any of the bigger ones. And she just really wanted to go to Bible college. So it was like, it all worked out, I guess.
It's got to be better than Pensacola. Did you guys get the Pensacola people come up and talk to you about their Christian college?
No, I never did. I mean, I considered going where she was, and then like I really wanted to go to Chapman, and even Chapman, because that's like a legitimately good school, but Chapman is a Jesuit school, and so I'm sure we're gonna get into it, but the kind of Baptist I was, even that was like a Satanist, basically. Like Jesuit.
As well have been Catholics.
But I'm like, but it's academically a good school, and they have a good choral program and all these things, and it's a beautiful campus, and I can stay in California, and it was just like out of the question if I wanted to stay on my walk with God. But I ended up going to Berkeley, so it was all downhill from Berkeley anyway.
So you tossed it all out anyway.
Yeah, basically, I'm the devil.
It's fun. So I recently learned of you when I was looking for. We like comics who grew up Christian are a lot of fun. So I'm like searching the internet for it, and I come across your podcast that you're not doing anymore, but
that you guys ripped off. Yeah.
Apparently, I was like, oh shit, she's either gonna be like, fuck you guys, or sounds like fun. So
yeah, we were wondering how rough this confrontation was gonna be.
It's brutal. No, I mean, when we started Who's Your God, I definitely did some searching around, because it seemed like such an obvious thing that someone would have done, and I found like a couple other, because you weren't doing this at the time. You guys are.
No, ours is
year and a half old.
Yeah, about a year and a half now. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. I see it as you taking up the reins.
We've assumed the mantle.
We should have stolen your name too, then.
Yeah, I love the name. But this is more explicit. But of course, there is Good Christian Fun, which Steve and I both did, and I love those two so much, and it's just a different thing. But we really wanted to get into like the nitty gritty of people's terrible stories. We had so much fun doing it. Yeah, but yeah, I remember looking around and not really seeing anything else at the time, so it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
You were like probably just the precursor to the ex-evangelical podcast boom, because there's like 700 of us now. But maybe that's just podcasts in generals.
Yeah, maybe
multiply.
so. Maybe the pandemic inspired it because people are just processing all their trauma.
It did. There was a lot of white males who didn't have much to do, so we just dove into our culture a little bit more.
Yeah, well, I support it. As many as we can have is fine. Let me know if you need any guest recommendations from our list.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you can always go with guest recommendations.
So let's jump into it. How did you grow up? It sounded to me like your family wasn't super religious, but you somehow ended up in church. Is that true?
Yes. So the abbreviated version, and you can listen to the first episode of Who's Your God, which is still up. No, I won't do that to you guys. The abbreviated version is, I'm just kind of from like a chaotic white trash family. And so there's, and my mom's side and all her relatives are Okies. So it's not that there's like been zero religion, but they just, for the most part at the time, my parents didn't really subscribe to anything. They certainly didn't go to church, and they were sinning a lot. But the way I tell the story is that essentially there was a Free Will Baptist church down the street from our house, and they
weren't
did
Calvinists then.
They did neighborhood recruitment, as a lot of churches do, and in the 80s, even though a lot of children were getting kidnapped in vans, they would bring around a van and be like, hey, we'll take your kids to church. And essentially, my dad was like, that's exactly when football is on. So this all works great for me. Yeah. Please take our loud children. And I have 3 siblings. I'm the youngest. And it basically ended up just being me and my one middle sister who really took to it and kept going. I think initially my oldest sister went. My brother never did. He was like in punk bands and doing drugs already. And he's like, very, very sinful. And
too far down the dark road for them to sink their teeth in.
Oh, yeah. But, eventually, like, everyone at church loved that. Like, they loved having someone in our family that was, like, so specifically part of that, like, 80s evil, of, like, secular music and drugs. And, like, it was really fun for them to have someone to focus on. He was almost like an evil celebrity to them, It's like someone to pray for. Because he was, like, a founding member of Gilman Street and all that stuff, and punks in general were just so like scary to the church. So they loved, like, they loved that they had him to pray for. But so my sister and I really took to it and end up going, 4 or 5 times a week.
Wow.
And we really found like this safe haven in that church, and adults that took care of us and other kids to do activities with. And we could walk there. So it was like, we were totally unsupervised. My house was very like Lord of the Flies-esque. So just just chaos and kids doing whatever they wanted at all times. So we just, we would walk to church, and often we would even walk there, like just to use the playground, or like see who was around, talk to the janitor or whatever.
Anybody. It's always a church janitor. I feel like it's janitors. Well, maybe I'm thinking specifically True Detective, but I feel like janitors are often the least. No disrespect to janitors, but I don't know. Church janitors.
Janitors are often the most safe figures, because a lot of the time they are just like a person doing a job and then seeing everything from the outside, and they're not necessarily like, the most religious people just because they work at a church. So I don't know. I think they can be like a good neutral figure. And then I started going to school there because so I grew up in the East Bay, east of San Francisco. And at that time, I think the school that my older sisters were in, this is an elementary school, by the way, had a shooting, which is fun.
Oh, God. That was before they were cool.
Not a mass shooting, guys. Just a regular one-on-one shooting.
Yeah. So much less interesting. Move on.
Revenge violence, And so then...
Was it a student, though? An elementary school, and a student brought a gun to school and shot someone?
Yeah, it was like an 11-year-old, yeah.
Oh, God.
Well...
no one died.
Bringing the mood down.
So all my siblings had been in private school, and then because the church school was right down the block, and also they were willing to take someone like hyper young for kindergarten, which ended up throwing off like my whole educational life, because I was always way younger than everybody, because I started when I just turned 4, which is like very young for kindergarten.
Yeah, my kid's going into kindergarten. My daughter just finished kindergarten. She's 6, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she's not as smart as me, unfortunately.
Maybe you could send her some notes.
Gifted student program.
No, but it is, and so you've seen very recently the developmental differences between 4 and 6 years old. It's like pretty vast. I always did well in school, but yeah, so but I just was emotionally stunted, I guess. But the combination of that and them not having any real rules or standards for education and the shooting, they put me in school at the church as well. So then I was there, Monday through Friday every day, plus at night a couple weeknights, and then Sunday morning and Sunday evening. I lived in this building.
Yeah, it's like free babysitting for your parents.
Yeah, I mean, I think for school they paid pretty penny. Although probably much cheaper than any other Baptist or private school would have been at the time. But yeah, so I just like lived in this building, and it was until 8th grade. I went to Christian schools, and then just
Do you remember,
thrown to the wolves of public school in 9th grade.
Culture shock.
Confused, but then academically way ahead of everyone else.
That's actually cool. Weird. I mean, it can take the other direction, where there are plenty of kids who go to private Christian schools that they go into public education. They're like, this is different. Also, where's the part about Noah's Ark? I can't find that anywhere.
Yes, we definitely learned the Bible a lot. We did Bible drills. Did you guys do Bible drills?
Sword drills.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
man.
So much fun.
Your sword. I completely forgot they were called sword drills. That's so funny. You guys are here to fill in the gaps.
Yeah. Did you have a life verse at that age?
I don't think so, no.
What's a life verse?
You don't know? Oh, God. # life verse. It's like your motto, but it's, Bible
I think
verse.
I probably was like, love is patient, love is kind is like something I would write like on my book covers and shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the one about Elijah having the kids eaten by bears?
That's a good one.
That's my life verse.
That's badass.
There's that one. There's the one about emissions like a donkey. That one's classic.
Yeah.
Do you remember what curriculum they used there? Was it like a standardized one or something independent or?
They did. So they did. I shouldn't say they had no standards for education. They almost had, I would say, too many standardized tests, and they did have pretty standard curriculum. They just really weren't. It was the worst kind of education because they were trying to meet all these specific like milestones, but they would hire people that weren't teachers. It's like a guy from the church named Jeff, was my 6th grade teacher. He'd never taught before. So it was like babysitting, but that, I specifically thrive well in that kind of environment. So it was bad for a lot of other kids. But I'm really good at like solo work, solo everything really. And so if I just had like workbooks, I would just run through them, and that's like no way to teach someone. But for the 1 or 2 kids that work well that way, then, then I ended up sort of ahead of where the public school system was. But everyone else was probably just floundering, I mean, God forbid anyone had a reading disability or whatever. It's just like, they're going to prey on it,
Dude, that was my school exactly. We used one called ACE. It was like Accelerated Christian Education.
I think that's what it was. Yeah, totally.
Had the little comic strips in it with the little perfect school children and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Love the cartoons. Coloring them in after you're done with your work. Ooh, my favorite. A little treat for Amy,
Yeah, it was definitely that way, though. Like, we had one actual teacher in the school, and the school just shrank the whole time I was there. At one point, it had like 90 students. By the time I graduated, it had like 40 something, K through 12. and it was like this one teacher, and then they would give parents like a discount on the schooling and stuff for their kids if they taught at the school.
Ugh.
So it was almost all exclusively like some of my friends' moms that were our teachers. And so like I was the same way. Like I did great on all the stuff that I just breezed through those books and aced the tests, and it wasn't any big deal. But then there was other kids that like graduated with like a 6th grade education, like literally
Yeah, I
just could
know.
not do it.
It should be illegal. And also I will say on, the stuff we're talking about, like math and spelling and all this stuff, we were probably advanced, but yeah, I didn't get a great glimpse of US history, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
World
that's what
history,
talking
for
about?
example. Social skills, 0.
I was homeschooled through
Oh
high
no.
school, and that was my fear too. I was like, I was convinced that by the time I went to college, I was going to be the biggest idiot in my class. Thankfully, I was fine, and I realized I wasn't like I had never even written a paper really in high school, and then I found out most people don't. I don't know. I guess a lot of the people in my classes and who were in high school didn't either. But I was the history one is what sticks out to me the most. Is like that's probably not how most of our history worked. That's a very
Right.
nice way of looking at a lot of it.
Having said that, I mean, that's also a problem with public schools just in like very, religious counties. But having said that, I was really shocked by the time I got to college how little everyone knew about the Bible.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, we knew too much. But once you start, studying literature and all these things, and I mean, even government, not that government and religion are ever connected.
Because we're a Christian nation, right, Amy? Is that where you're going with this?
Yeah. Like I mean, I had friends in college that literally knew nothing, not even the standard stories, and I was so shocked by that because it's such a massive part of like our culture, especially in literature.
Yeah.
That I'm just like, you don't know who Samson is, you freak? And I'm like, sure, I've never heard of American slavery, so what?
And Samson's a badass story. I mean, he kills like 10,000 people on a desert dune with a donkey's jaw. I mean,
Yeah.
well, that story.
I mean, at minimum, when I have like friends who have kids, I'm like, get them just like the little like kids version of at least these stories, so they have some like, just some basis for a lot of these like allegories that pop up over and over. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Don't give them
definitely
the
like a
dark
cultural
parts.
marker.
Yeah. And then I did some religious studies at Berkeley, and like, I mean, my mind was blown learning about the other religions, but for Christianity, I had it down. I knew a lot, and people were just shocked by some of these stories or having to read like excerpts from the Bible at all, and it was really interesting.
Yeah, it's funny because for a while I was like, I feel like they're almost it would never fly, but so I got a Bible degree myself, so it's like.
Nice.
Like, what can I do with that? I was like, I feel like I wish they would allow like a secular teaching. Secular is also a word you only say if you grew up Christian.
I know. I
no
put
one
it in a
else says
couple
it.
jokes, and I think people don't know what I'm talking about.
And but I'm like, I wish there was opportunity to teach it as like just as what it is. It's like it literally influences so much, like you were saying, that it seems reasonable to be like, this is what this book is, and here's an academic perspective on it. That way, you're prepared for.
Yeah, I think those classes
52% of our senators
exist.
to say we don't believe in women's rights anymore. And, then you can have a conversation about why their idea of the Bible around that is probably not healthy.
Yeah, outside of religious studies courses, there are like I took a class that was just like religious text and literature or something. I don't know if that was exactly what it was called. But they're definitely out there, and then it's like I learned about a couple books or versions of the Bible when I was in college that I never would have touched as a real Christian. You know what I mean? Which were just like I think it's called the Book of God. It's like whatever that guy who just wrote basically like a fictionalized, chronological version of the Bible with most of the
It's like
highlighted
a
stories.
graphic novel.
Yeah,
No,
it's
it
like
was
novelized.
so the I think I know what you're talking about. It was someone tried to kind of like mesh everything together as to one basic one narrative, right? Like
Yeah, which is also impossible, but he gave it a really good effort. But it was like, that was a book I'd recommend to people if like you just want to sort of know the highlights or like all the more famous stories from the Bible without like, getting any of it in your mind.
yeah.
Mind pollution, man.
I think it is funny. Like I went to a secular college, my first year of college before I went to Liberty, and I took a like English 101 or something like that. One of the like the first courses you take. And the guy that was my professor was kind of known for just being awful. Like he was just going to run you into the ground and give you a D. And at one point we went through, I think it was like John or something like that, but like from a totally different perspective, because like I feel like all of the Bible teachings and stuff that we got as kids and in church, it was kind of like how people approach history, where it was just like, these are the events and these are how they happen and here's the rules, and
Yeah.
never really delving into like the themes and what they meant and like a more personalized message of it and stuff. So like I got into this English class and this guy is reading it basically as literature, is having us go through it, and I did not get it at all. I did horrible. That's like the one book we read that I had read before, and I think I got a D on the project.
You like
Well,
literally didn't read anything else except for that.
You know what? That sounds like a positive to me. You were firmly planted in your faith and you could not see out of it. Good for you, dude.
Dude, you should have sued him
This would
for
be
religious
proud.
discrimination.
I mean, that was the whole thing about kind of deciding to, like, the fear of going to a secular university to begin with, right? And that's like kind of what our youth pastors told us, is it's like, yes, your whole life, like your faith is going to be tested, and that is a part of being alive, and you have to, stay on the path and all this stuff. But like at minimum, go to a Christian school, so it's not like coming from all sides, basically, including the people who are supposed to teach you. But ultimately I did want like a real education, I guess.
Maybe a boyfriend someday.
Yeah, well, that was kind of what happened, is that my high school boyfriend was, thank God, he was like applying to schools, and I always had really good grades, but we were poor, and nobody in my family went to college before, aside from my sister who went to Hillsdale. Sorry, she hates when I say that I was the first person to go to college. She's like, just because we weren't accredited.
Just the first one that counts.
I'm like, did you have to apply? No? Okay, I think this is fair.
Was it accredited when she graduated? Because that technically would mean she didn't go to college.
I do think they were literally doing like 1 year on, 1 year off. So she got some kind of degree. I think she got a double degree in library science and missions. So she's not using.
I was almost a missions major. I had plans to go to Cambodia.
Oh, sure. Yeah. But so we just didn't know. It wasn't a part of like our family conversation. We didn't know how to do it. We didn't know it costs money to apply to college, which even saying it out loud is hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to cost money to go, but just to apply, like my mom was horrified. She's like, why do people do this? Like, which is so funny now because I'm literally a comedian. I don't use it at all.
None of us do.
Yeah.
But so my boyfriend at the time, who I was not having sex with, but I was doing everything else that you could figure out.
Feels.
He's,
and was your standing up for God resisting his pressuring you, or was he a respectful gentleman?
You know what? He never pressured, and I'm like, I've resisted the urge all these years to be like, he was such a great guy, because that should be like the baseline. But he was a great guy. Like, he still is a great guy. Like, I still know him. But it was insane to me that like,
That's why.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. And way
Easy.
more than his friends too. No, you're not wrong about that. He's like, what am I? I'm going to complain about getting blown twice a day. Like, fine. Like our close male friends in our friend group were all nerds. So yeah, he was doing fine for himself, but he never was pressury about me stopping being Christian or having sex or anything. He really was just like an angel. But he's from a very educated family. Like his parents were doctors, and so he was just like, okay, time for college applications. And I was like, oh, no, totally. Yeah, me too, big time. Yep. And then because I was in all AP classes, like everyone around me was applying. So it was just like, I was one of the few times positive peer pressure has worked with teenagers. Because I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna go to Hillsdale Community or Bible College in Oklahoma, and they were just like, what are you talking about? This isn't. And some of them were Christian too, but they're just like, you have to go to a college. Like you have really good grades, and you're probably gonna test out of like the first semester. Like
Yeah, right.
so he kind of like him and his family and our other friends like taught me how to do the whole thing, which is so much red tape. And if you've never done it, it's very overwhelming. And I was like, well, okay, you can apply to as many UCs as you want if you live in California. So I'll just do that. And then I'll just go where I get in. And I got into Berkeley and I went, and my youth pastors were definitely very judgmental about it.
Really?
And
were they
my
dorks
mom-
or were they kind of what kind of youth pastors are we talking?
Oh boy. Well, I mainly was under one, Pastor Jeff Dallen, and he is currently in prison for many counts of child molestation.
Oh, shit.
Whoa, really?
So yeah, he was kind of dorky, I guess you could say.
So
Kind of a
dorky.
nerd, child rapist
What a
nerd.
nerd. You don't even have sex with adults. How uncool.
Oh my god.
He was, I would say, before we found out about that, he was definitely of like the goober, creepy variety where, where it was like my brother seemed to know in a way. Like he was like, oh, I don't trust something about that guy. He also just disappeared out of nowhere one day, like because he was from Oklahoma and then he moved to the Bay Area, but so many ties to Oklahoma. But the short version is, yes, my family's there, but that's also like where most Free Will Baptists are. That's like where that like sect of the Baptist church started. So they pretty much only exist in Oklahoma and the Central Valley of California. And there's one in the Bay Area. It doesn't make any sense. But yeah, so he, I think, was on semi good behavior for the years that he was in the Bay Area, which is nice. At least nobody has like disclosed anything happening. But then he disappeared one day. So I think he like fucked up, and then he went back to Oklahoma, molested some more kids, and now he's finally in prison. Thank God.
Wow.
Like
things were going great, and then someone Googled him. What? So were you still in the youth group when he just took off?
Yeah, and it was very it was really hard for me and my sister because like our dad died when I was 9, and in general, like the adults in our life were very chaotic. And so although I never really like bonded with Pastor Jeff in the way that she did, like I think even I don't know how to phrase this. I always am like, don't phrase it in a way that it sounds like some kids are just meant to get molested. Like, but I do think I had just a keen distrust of people that I was maybe born with, and for whatever reason. And my sister is like a people pleaser, like to the millionth degree. She really she's a middle child, she's very sweet. She wants to be loved. She'll do anything for anybody. So as soon as he got caught, I was like, okay, tell me what happened.
Right.
And she's like, oh, no, nothing happened. But thankfully, I was really grateful for that. But she was kind of bonded with him, like they had a closer relationship, and we like babysat his kids and stuff. So having already lost like this male figure in our lives, and then just different pastors coming in and out. Like, it was really hard when he disappeared. We didn't understand it, and we didn't get the key to that mystery until he was arrested
Oh, really?
many years later. Yeah, like I was like 30 when I think he got arrested. This is the
How'd you
year I
find out about
started
that? Did
stand-up
someone just
comedy.
did someone like from then just call you and be like, you would never
Oh,
believe this?
it makes the rounds.
Yeah.
I know from personal experience, it makes the rounds.
Yes, it made the rounds it was a sort of a traumatic ripple effect. I mean, because we're still friends with a lot of people we went to church with who are no longer religious. And I think the East Bay in general, for being like so many big cities, is still like quite small. And so yeah, things just kind of make it back to you. But and so we were kind of, my sister and I and our other friend Joe Harrison, who we grew up with, we were kind of like, we should check in with the church because the main pastor was still the same guy. And we're like, I don't know how we go about this, but it seems like someone there should create an open space and a comfortable space, if possible, for these psychos, for anyone to come out and disclose, whether or not they were abused by Pastor Jeff. And they were, of course, so against it. The way they were talking about him was psychotic. They were like, yeah, the devil really got to Jeff, but we're really praying for him. Like,
Oh my God.
No way.
No motivation to like care for, the people of the church or kids that might have been hurt. And then the best part, I mean, when I say best, it's going to be worst.
Yeah. I have an idea.
Was our friend Jimmy, or he was Jimmy at the time, goes by a different name due to religious trauma, had a couple years before come out of the closet. Just
Sounds like
regular
a safe
old
place
gay
to do
guy.
that.
Yeah, he was gone from the church, but he came out. He contacted my sister. Like, he just got in touch with a couple people who had been nice to him at church and been like, hey, just, this is my name now and I'm gay. Yeah, just a regular old gay guy, no big deal. And so when we were having this conversation after Pastor Jeff had been arrested, someone from the church that we grew up with said, at least he didn't end up like Jimmy. And we were like,
Are
you guys
kidding me?
And we're talking about literally, he was jailed for 45 different kids. And so those are the kids we know
45?
Holy shit.
From
it's at
one
least 3
school.
times that.
Oh,
So
easy. Yeah.
Somebody organized an effort to get all those people in touch with each other then.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, one of the parents, because he was teaching music, I think, at his Christian school in Oklahoma. And one of the parents, again, made a comfortable place for kids to come out and disclose, and then the numbers just skyrocketed, and it was like,
Oh
it was
my
so
God.
sad. But they're like, oh, you know how it is when the devil gets you, but we're praying for him, but at least he's not gay. And it's just like, first of all, this is very dark, but I'm like, he also molested boys. So is that, I don't, okay.
It's not gay, it's children. Children aren't people. So
Yeah.
Boys are less gay,
It was just horrific. But it did answer the question of why he disappeared without notice. It also kind of brought us closer again together with people we had been in church with that we hadn't talked to in a while. And I mean, not that it's like there's no positives to look for in something so horrific, but I mean,
can I tell you
I'm
where
really digging.
I want to tell you where I thought your story was going to go when you brought up Jimmy, is based on my understanding and experience with Christianity. I was pretty sure it was going in the direction of Jimmy got molested and that's why he's gay. That's where I thought it was going.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate the darker twists. I guess that's
even that twist would put too much personal responsibility on Brother Jeff that they were not willing to do.
right.
And it just, and then we saw his mugshot and it was just so creepy. And then
that
literally
changes.
months later, I started stand-up comedy.
Yeah, you're like, I have a lot to say.
Work some of this out.
And I have I've tried in the past to write bits about Jeff, and I like to say his full name because fuck him. He might be dead. I don't know. It's like I mean, he was in a prison through COVID. Like, I hope he's dead.
Well, I mean, also child molesters don't do great in prison.
Yeah. And I've tried and failed to write bits about him, and then for some reason I started working on this new abortion bit, fun and
those are fun,
timely, and then just sort of had this memory of how, like, at church lock-ins, like, I mean, he would pick the worst fucking movies anyway. We would always have to watch, like, Where the Red Fern Grows and shit, and it's just like, oh. Or like the Fox and the Hound, which Fox and the Hound is fine, but it's always that movie that like pastors show you when you're like 12 already, and it's like it's for 4-year-olds, you know. It's just because it had to be like totally free of anything racy or sinful.
Oh yeah,
but
you didn't have Lord of the Rings yet. That's the problem.
But he would show us these like doctored Christian propaganda films of late term abortions that were
movie night.
Yeah, we're eating pizza,
popcorn, shoveling it down your face.
It was really effective because it was truly a horror movie, and of course later in life I realized it was not real, but in the film, it would just be like a giant. It would be like a full term baby. I don't know why I'm laughing. It's so horrifying. Oh, Pastor Jeff, full term baby. And then some forceps, like going in and just crushing the skull, and then like dragging out. Like, this is so sorry. This is gruesome.
No, this is what I learned too. So this is worth.
Oh, really?
You've seen? Yeah, I haven't seen
it. Works.
I haven't taken like a worldview class at Liberty, and they didn't show us pictures or videos, but we spent like 2 weeks. It was like 4 or 6 classes that we spent on, like, going over every horrible detail of every single abortion method, from pills all the way up to, clubbing toddlers like a baby seal or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
For us, they basically put, I don't know why you had scissors up there, but they would basically, I was told that it was, I mean, anything, whatever, who cares, whatever you find.
I heard this scissor thing.
And you stick it into the back of the head, and then you use the forceps to take them out in pieces, is what I heard. Also, I just remembered...
They use one of those slap chops from the infomercials.
That would be amazing. I remember in that class, like, while we were talking about I don't remember what method it was, but I literally like was sitting there listening to it, and I started like seeing spots.
Yeah.
And then I, like, looked up, and I was on the floor, like laying on my neck, staring up, with like 6 people in the class like standing around me. I'm like, oh, I just want to die.
Oh my God.
That's so crazy.
Wow.
I remember when I learned about this whole partial birth. I actually forgot about this until this conversation. One time, I don't know, me and my brother were arguing, and I grabbed a pair of scissors and made a partial birth abortion joke, and my parents did not like that. It wasn't a good joke, but it was not. I mean, I was 15 or 16, but that was a lecture for sure.
And then you go like, these people don't freak me out. I have like weird empathy for people that truly believe this, because I know myself how long I did. And because, instilling this like childhood trauma and just people you're supposed to trust telling you that this is real is really effective. And so like, I'm not making any excuses for our fucking leaders or the ghouls on the Supreme Court, but for just your average, like, I don't know, person on Twitter who wants to call me a murderer, I'm like, I have a weird empathy for them because they truly believe it's real. But then I'm bringing this up for a reason that's like a little bit braggy, but I'm telling you guys, because you'll understand, I'm like losing sleep over it, because this weekend I'm doing the Ball Arena where the Nuggets play with Tom Segura.
Which is so cool. Good for you. That's amazing.
And I want to do my abortion into child molestation joke about Pastor Jeff. And I'm like, what if I get booed, And also fuck them if they boo me. Plus, they're there to see Tom Segura. They're going to hear horrific shit.
I feel like if it's his crowd, it's funny.
It's a gruesome crowd.
Derail that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to. I would have to look it up. It's not coming to me right now. But I saw Tom Segura, not maybe about a year ago. I forget, but it was on. I saw him in Maine, and his opener also grew up Christian, and I had reached out to him.
Was it Jeff Tate?
No, it wasn't. I would have to take a silence and pause to look him up.
Oh yeah, I can't remember the other guy's name. He only has like 4 or 5 openers, and there's only one guy that I'm not like real friends with, but I heard he's really funny. Matt Fulcheron. Yeah, I am friends with Matt. Yeah, he's great.
I had reached out to him, and he was like, well, maybe, I don't know. He's like, some of these jokes about like this Christian shit, they go over fine with the Tom Segura crowd because I know the kind of people he pulls, but they don't always do great in comedy clubs and when I'm working out material. So it feels a little weird to bring some of this up on a podcast. Maybe another time. Just reach out to me later. So I will reach out to him.
Oh, Matt, I'm gonna drag him for being a coward. Well, there's another piece too that unfortunately I'm a woman, and sometimes these gruesome things maybe they would accept from Matt or Tom, but like it doesn't go over as well when I do it, even though I should be the most able to joke about it because I can have abortions. But there's
not anymore. Well, where you live, you're fine. Never mind. Sorry.
It did come out of my like processing that stuff though, and it was like, I mean, that's the goal for comedy, right? It's like, oh, I have this bit I think is hilarious that actually helped me work through some stuff, but part of it is like, oh, I understand now why Pastor Jeff wanted more people to have unwanted kids, because his were aging out and they were starting to talk. That's
so good. We got to deepen the bench here.
And then it goes into
boring for me.
Something. I mean, the irony of these like people, and and that extends to like the general religious right, who are very loud on social media and everything, who really like. I mean, they talk about sin always in a way that they're not doing any, and so he's the most extreme example of this, of like he's doing the most horrific thing, you can imagine, and then making us feel guilty about this crazy shit. And something he really like sat me down and talked to me about was listening to Boys to Men. And, and I'm like, first of all, if anyone has a direct line to Jesus, it's these fucking angels. They're wearing sweater vests. Like, where's the threat? And then I'm like, oh, it's just really interesting that he was so against Boys to Men, very comfortable with men being with boys.
Yeah.
It is my dream in honor of Pastor Jeff, like while I still can, to just have like my final abortion, like while End of the Road by Boys to Men plays in the clinic.
It's just a real send-off for Jeff. That'd be the perfect day for him to get stabbed in prison.
Yeah. I just want to say his full name to 18,000 people too. Like, fuck him, dude. But it worked. It all worked. Like, I believed the abortion video, and I also just really did feel like I was so sinful all the time. He was very effective as a youth pastor.
And what's crazy,
and I was a good kid.
It's like talking about sin. A lot of the sin that we get shit for is the sexual sin. And I didn't have a lot of opportunities to lose my virginity. Let's be clear. But when you think about like people who, when you think about like,
I'm going to push you in a locker.
Like that guy molested more kids than most people I know had sex with people. And it's like, but he gets the pass. But if those teenagers had sex, it'd be like, okay, we need to talk about your relationship with God. And that's what's ridiculous.
Totally. And it's clinical. It's like the more shame, that's assuming that he had shame. Who knows? The more shame you have about your own evil, the more you like project it onto other people. But he really, really traumatized us in so many ways. And we weren't even molested by him. And it's like, oh, I'm so sorry I'm doing a bit to you, by the way. It's very new. So I'm like, I do feel so nervous about it this weekend. But, and I'm like, don't worry. Like, he didn't get me or my sister. And like, we were really fucking cute. I don't know what this guy was looking for. I'm like 45 counts and not the Miller sisters. Fuck you, Pastor Jeff. But the fact
So
that
good.
he was able to instill that much trauma on even the kids that he didn't like sexually violate is so impressive. Like, what the
yeah.
fuck?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Because Sam and I came up in like the early 2000s. We were in high school and youth group and stuff like that. And I'm always just like trying to sort out in my head why it ends up being like why there seems to be so many of people like Jeff that wind up in those places. And like I think there's something to be said for like, okay, this guy knows he has a problem, he's trying to get a handle on it, doesn't know what to do, he ends up in church trying to pray it away or something like that. But that doesn't make you work with the children in the youth group or whatever, but their reaction to those types of things is so weird, because these are also the people who like I saw one the other day in my town here. I'm in Kansas, so we got a few religious people, but there was a guy with a sticker on his truck. He had like some conservative stuff on there, he had some Christian stuff, and then he had one sticker that said "Save a cow, hunt a pedophile." And that's the overall like consensus and reaction to like that type of stuff, when it's in conversation. But then, like we had a guy that went to prison for molesting boys, and he was a helper in our youth group. And like I wasn't real close to him, I didn't know him super well.
You're ugly.
Had a lot of maybe just not quite cute enough for him, but
he had that thick curly Corey Matthews hair that I guess he just wasn't into.
Right. But he might have had a type, because he was like real big on the big brother big sister thing. Mm-hmm. And he always had like 3 or 4 black kids from Detroit at his house, and that's who ended up accusing him, was those kids.
Right.
But like people didn't believe it. Like they really thought that like it was some sort of witch hunt that had sent him to jail, and it was ridiculous. And it's so strange to think of it that way. And this guy's like, he's been single, never dated anybody the entire time that we've known him. He's always had all these kids around. Like it makes sense. The archetype is there. But like nobody in the church believed that he would do that, and they all thought that like he had been framed or something like that.
Yeah. And I hadn't thought about this yet, and I can't believe it, but it's really interesting what you're saying, because I'm guessing that guy with the bumper sticker is like more like a QAnon person. And it's so funny that these people are like obsessed with like pedophiles in Hollywood now and in the government, and that's like part of this conspiracy. And it's just like, but you guys have never fucking cared about pedophiles like in your house, in your literal church, and have never been able to have a conversation about it. And there's a reason, why a lot of these people will target like low income kids, or specifically black kids a lot of the time, because it's like less likely to be something that's maybe talked about in like their community. And it's so much easier to keep silent. Or I mean, honestly, boys in general, like, because if you just instill enough shame, and that that's like a taboo subject, Christian boys, like, they're never encouraged to talk about sex and sexual shame and feelings. And so it's very easy to keep people quiet. I mean, that's like the entire backbone of the Catholic Church, right? And so it's so funny, these people now like want to talk about pedophilia, and it's just like, what? Like, we've been trying to get you to talk about it.
Yeah.
Sexual violence definitely transcends class. I think a lot of the time it's like more accepted in an upper class, like, I don't know, fucking Elon Musk's dad is like fucking his niece or whatever, and it's just fine. Like, because that's like old school like aristocracy shit, it's like, yeah, you fucking the family, like. I mean, it's at every level.
It's almost like with cult leaders. Like, cult leaders violate every taboo eventually. And that's why, like, so many of them, if you like, because I've listened to every podcast about cults and stuff like that, and every one of them, like, if they last long enough, if they keep in the, keep the top spot long enough, they end up, messing with kids. And I think it's like there's an element of like it's like a power and dominance thing to some extent, where it's like this
Mhm.
is the level of control that I have over these people. Like, I slept with your wife and now I'm harassing your children and you don't do anything about it. Like, in fact, you're giving me half your paycheck. And I don't know, it's a
Mhm.
weird deal. It's so common though in that like realm, people who seek that like top spot.
Totally. And even the process of keeping someone quiet, I think, is such like a power boner for these evil people. Like, sometimes maybe more so than the actual sex acts themselves, is just like the I'll show you how I'm going to make sure you don't say anything ever
Sure, yeah.
until maybe you're an adult and it's too late.
100%.
And it's just, yeah, it's so dark.
Well,
I
glad we hung out
just
here for a while.
Anyway, so where'd you say you can buy that bumper sticker? I'm gonna flip the script and start just putting QAnon bumper stickers on my car, and it's just people just don't know what's going on, and they pull up and see me,
It would
and
be
they're
good to
all
just
vague.
buy, like, the QAnon sticker pack and just start sticking them on random people's cars. Like,
Yeah,
Comet
but
Pizza, boom.
I think also so much of it, aside from the sexual shame, is just, and this is how we felt when we like went back to our church members to like try to get them to talk about Jeff and create like a safe space for people to come out, is it's like it just, I mean, it just shatters your belief system, because even if your belief in Christ and God are very strong and like immovable, you still look to like these pastors as people who got it. Like, they really like they're basically like the A+ students of the Christianity class, And so if they can be doing such evil, then you're like, you have to look inside yourself. And I think that's very, very scary for people. I don't know why it's not easier to just be like, yeah, people are inherently flawed. But that's what this whole conversation of, the devil got to him. It's like, there's no personal responsibility in that. It's like 100% he was the victim of
Yeah.
Satan. And it's just, yeah, it's very scary for people to face, because aside from just the sex part of it, it's like, oh, then we never know who's like consistently like doing evil acts while like keeping this perfect like Christian face. And that's very, very scary.
It allows them to
There's something
partition it.
there for
Like,
sure.
it allows them to partition it in a way that says, if it happens in here, it was despite our best efforts in commitment to Christ. But if it happens outside of these walls, it's because these people turned their hearts over to evil a long time ago, and they're culpable because
Right.
they've given themselves up to it. But now in here, we're trying to resist it, and every once in a while, that sneaky little Satan gets one of them. But we'll have grace for it.
Exactly. Yeah, the example of Jimmy, you're right. It's like he's choosing sin. I mean, because in their mind, you choose to be gay, and so that's just a whole other category. Pastor Jeff got by Satan, but Jimmy
Yeah.
is choosing to walk, a life of evil, hand in hand with the devil, and that's we don't do that. It's just like, yeah, it's,
So
I
when-
miss it.
when
Was
did
the
you see-
satanic panic stuff still like pretty strong at the time when you were in church, or?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think that was part of the reaction to like my brother, for sure. I mean, there was this idea that like if he was in a punk band, he was like sacrificing human bodies at the shows and shit, and like drinking blood.
At the very worst, they're throwing poop,
Yeah. They're writing shitty songs. I know that. No, his band is very good still. Yeah, it was, I mean, I think that was more it was more rampant like early 80s. I was maybe a little like too young, but I definitely like through our podcasts and stuff I've read a lot about it, and a lot more of that made sense in just like how they responded to him. But yeah, it was definitely around. It's such a weird thing though, because the whole background of this is like I'm in the Bay Area, like, so it lends the story a special spice that it's hard for people to understand. Like, it's very hard to grow up Christian in the Bay Area, but if you're being told like that lesson we talked about, like, that just your faith is always going to be tested, and there's evil around every corner, then wow, I mean, it's like a Christian obstacle course,
Yeah.
it's like
Right.
everything is there,
I didn't sign up for a Tough Mudder. Also something Christians love.
Yeah, and because it was the 80s, I remember, like, of course they told us, like, that everyone, that AIDS was a God cursing, gay people and all this stuff, even though as a kid I was like, I've heard not only gay people get it, and they're like, shut up. And my older sister, who's a good person and was never like super religious, was like, going door to door, like, collecting money for the AIDS walk, and knocked on our pastor's door because the church was right down the street and they lived in the parsonage, and he was just like, what you're doing is evil, pretty much.
Come on.
She's just like, they wouldn't give her any money, and they gave her a long talking to. And then, she came back home, and she was sort of like, I mean, there were many attempts by my sister and brother to like tell us to stop going there. And like, but they were also teenagers, like, it's kids raising kids. They were doing their own shit. So they would be like, I don't trust that guy. He's creepy, or these people are evil. And they like, think that God's killing gay people. And we'd be like, noted, but we were children, so we didn't get out of it,
What would be their argument for why raising money for the AIDS walk was bad? I mean, was it just like you're attempting to do something about AIDS, which is God's divine punishment, or?
Yeah, because as they saw it, there was one very clear solution to the AIDS crisis, which is stop being gay. I mean, which of course people choose, and that was it. So, I think their suggestion to her was like, raise money for a real cause, raise money for the church, like an organization that actually helps people who will be receptive to the help and where it can be effective, because giving money to this is just like pointless as long as they keep committing this evil. And
we're trying to add on to our
AIDS.
playground. We're trying to build a new playground, and
we want that rubber mulch.
We need more kids here. Pastor Jeff said he wants to get a good playground fund going.
Oh my God, they never updated that fucking playground. It was like a death trap.
When did the devil start getting you? When were you starting to slip out of everything? Started stumbling over all those obstacles.
I mean, my first couple years in college, it's always, they tell you this too. It's like when you're transitioning churches or trying to find a new church where you really fit after you've been used to one, like they'll tell you, like, this is a great opportunity for the devil to get you, so you better hurry and find one. But it's also just like a huge social change. You've been used to the same group of people, your whole life, and then you're like trying to fit into a new one, and it's hard. It's really hard to find a new church that works. There's a reason a lot of the time, even when families like change cities, that they just kind of stop going. Like, how many people we know have that story of like, oh yeah, I used to go to church every Sunday, and then we moved and my parents just kind of stopped. It's like,
yeah,
because it sucks.
It sucks.
And also, Christians are fucking weird. And so if you don't have those few people that you really like hanging out with there, you're just like, ugh. Or you're so rooted in the routines and the belief system, of course, but I think really more just the routines that you're used to. And then this new place changes it up, and they're trying to do communion more often or something. And I'm just like, no, we do that on Easter and Christmas Eve, and that's fucking it. Okay.
At 6 o'clock in the morning before church starts. That's when mine would do it.
Music is like the hardest thing to cope with. You go to a different church, and it's like a different cast of really horrible singers that nobody has the heart to tell them they can't participate in the choir.
Yeah. You start to get to know your hymnal, like, what page your jams are on. And then all of a sudden it's like all these other songs, and it's just like, it's hard. So I tried for a while to like find a church. But again, I was in the Bay Area. And so I had probably been going to like the one. By the way, these places are literally 15 miles from each other. I just didn't have a car or anything. So I wasn't going to go back to my original church. I needed to find one near campus. But I'm in Berkeley. Like, they're all going to be liberal as fuck, you know? Like, there's going to be lesbian pastors and shit. And like, I didn't know if I was ready for that. And somehow worse music, you know? And then I even tried like the church where it was like mostly Asian kids. And then that was a whole other thing. And I was like, oh, this is different and spicy. And I joined like Christian groups, Christian clubs, and I would do like, you know, go to the parks and like try to save homeless people.
You gave it the old college try. We can't say that.
Literally.
No one can say that you didn't put in your best effort.
Was it one of those official like college ministry things, like Campus Crusade or something like that?
Yes, Campus Crusade is exactly it.
Nice. I did that for a second.
And I was still going to like, I would sometimes visit my old church, and I would still go to like Dawson McAllister conventions and shit. I don't know if you guys ever
Dawson
knew
McAllister.
Dawson McAllister.
No.
Well, the 2 listeners that have heard of him are going to be really pumped. He was like this cool, like, youth pastor guy who would literally like sell out arenas, and just have like teen weekends, like workshop weekends where you just cover all the hot topics, you know, and do your workbooks and prayer circles and everything.
Which prison is he in?
You know what? I have not looked him up in a while. I don't know if he's still alive, but I always in my gut felt like Dawson McAllister was maybe a good guy. And I don't know why, but I just thought later, I was like, this guy, I don't even know. Like, I think he found a great way to make money, you know? It's like a Righteous Gemstones kind of thing where you're like, because he did seem like chill. He had no creepy vibes. So, I mean, don't quote me on that if you were touched by Dawson McAllister.
He died in December 17th, 2020.
Oh,
from COVID.
No, probably so. Aw. R.I.P. Dawson. But no crimes to speak of, right?
Well, I don't know. I don't see any convictions on his
Wikipedia. Out, though, because
Wikipedia.
he can't defend himself. That's what usually.
Poor old Ravi.
Ravi Zacharias?
But the real, you know, I think, as happens with a lot of us, the real transition was just that I like made friends and they were normal friends. And I like wanted to do college stuff. I was still with my boyfriend. And again, he was very supportive, but he was just like kind of starting to do his own thing because it was like weird that I carried this Christian stuff into college, and kind of weird that we even stayed together, you know, and we didn't for much longer, maybe like into, you know, the middle of our sophomore year. Did have sex, thankfully. That was fun. And then we did it all the time. Did nothing else.
Did you guys come together afterwards?
No, not at all. It was more just, I think I almost apologized of like, because I was already starting to like leave the church in my mind, and I was just like, man, you sure were patient. I'm sorry about that. Because once you do it, it seems so
like not a big,
I wouldn't say minor, but yeah, not a big deal. It's like we love each other. It's not like I'm you know, with a prostitute or whatever, which is also fine. But in the scheme of sins,
your first time, guys, come on.
In the scheme of sins, it felt very normal. I was just like, you're my best friend. I love you so much. It's just like it's just like the one thing you haven't put in that hole. Who cares, you know? Just do it.
So you gave that the old college try too. Good for you.
Yeah. And then it was a very slow process. Every once in a while, I would try to go back to a church. And, you know, I kept praying for a long time, but the fear stayed with me for a very long time. Like, that was really probably not until, you know, maybe I was 25 that it was, I guess, totally gone. You know, having said that, like, I prayed last week for the first time in, I don't even know, maybe 15 years.
For your abortion joke to go well this weekend?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll be praying after those shows. When Jack Knight died, or when Jack Knight killed himself, I was just like, I don't know, I just prayed for his family because it felt like there was nothing else to do. You know, it was just like, it's so tragic and so fucked up and such a surprise that I tapped into that old thing that I'm like, I don't know who I'm talking to. It's like essentially good vibes, I guess, for his family, but there's nothing to be done. It just is terrible, you know? And so I like texted Steve, my podcast host, and I was like, I think I just prayed. And he's like, yeah, like that's normal, you know? Like, you know, it's like me too, you know, sometimes it just creeps up. It obviously has a different meaning, but it's like sometimes still there. But for the most part, I'm pretty much out.
Well, and that's what's funny about it is like, you know, we were kind of taught there was just this big petition to ask for things or whatever, but I don't know, because that's something that I had stopped doing in any like hello person like kind of way. But it does every once in a while something's going on in your life or like hitting you in a way where you're just like it almost feels like it bubbles up and you're like, I guess that's what that was. And I feels like, but when it happens, it feels like that's like what you wish you knew it was earlier.
Yeah.
That it could just be that and not be this big like long list of requests that you had to keep track of. Did you have like how many times?
Like God is Santa.
Like, they would keep track of it, write down their prayer requests, and they're like, and I'd go back and I'd look through it a year later and realize that God answered every single one of those, and I'd be like, horse shit. That did not.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think God answered many of mine, and I didn't have a lot of requests, but I'm sure I definitely know my aunt and uncle ended up getting divorced. That was one that I prayed for every day for a while.
So shitty.
God granted George W. Bush wisdom. That came true.
Oh yeah, he's such a good painter. We should have been more specific.
He's my favorite painter next to John Wayne Gacy.
And Adolf Hitler.
I think also when you have because when this like nonstop barrage of terrible things keeps happening, a lot of the time there is some actionable thing, right? You go looking for the GoFundMe, you find the organization that's like working on this problem, whatever it is, or just mutual aid, like. But when something like that happens, it's just like nothing, you know. It's like, I mean, Jack wasn't hurting for money. I hope that goes to his family. It's just like, and then sometimes I go, well, this is a stereotype, but ends up being true a lot of the time. I would bet that his family also prays. So in some way, it feels like more effective if I'm like doing it for someone who does that as well, you know. And I was like, I don't know them. They're never gonna know, you know. But it just like felt right at the time, and it was literally the only thing there is to do. Like, what else do you do? Post a picture and go like, yeah, he was my friend too. It's like, I don't know.
That is really tough. I've recently, I mean, smaller scale by a long shot, but my friend's dog died, and like, you know, I knew it was like a big deal to him, you know, and not the same thing at all, but you're kind of in that scenario where it's like, I want to be supportive. I want to say something. I want to, you know, what you want to do something, but like, what do you do? You know, say, I'm sorry, man. Like,
yeah, no, a dead dog will really wreck you. Like, really, sometimes their deaths are almost harder to deal with than people we know. Because you never had a conversation with them. You know what I mean? You don't have a memory. Like, you have memories with dogs, but you're not like, oh, that one time we went to Vegas or whatever. Like, it's all you know. They're just like living. They're just dogs, and then they just fucking break your heart in half. And like, it is like very, very sad. And yeah, you're right. My family dog just died, and now I feel like an asshole. I probably should have said a little prayer for my mom because now that bitch is religious. After all of this, let's just put like that pin on the fucking story.
Personally offensive.
She is a self-identified Christian now, and she does try to talk to me sometimes, and I'm just like, absolutely not. No. I did this without you for so long. I prayed for you, dude. I can't. I guess my prayers were answered. My mom got saved.
Yeah, boom. A little late.
Just check mark next to
that
one.
I didn't believe in you anymore. That's
But
your cue to believe in God again. You're like, oh shit, this guy really is pulling through. Fuck.
I know. I just can't get into it with her, because also so much of it is political, and I'm
that
like, but again,
Oh.
not that those are separate at all, but I think she's also scared of dying and she's old. And so I'm like, if this comforts you, like, I fully support you as long as you're not hurting anybody else. But like, we are not going to have a conversation about me getting saved, because I used to be like, this is my little tract, just 6 years old. Like, Mom, I have something I'd like to talk to you about. And she's just like drunk and partying. Like, no, we're not going to do it.
That is like one of the balance points that I feel like you find eventually after leaving the church. Usually, you leave and then you're kind of angry for a while and you just can't stomach anybody talking about Christianity or this or that or the other, and then eventually you kind of come around to a point where you're like, if that works for you and if it's helpful to you and it makes life a little better, like go for it. The impulse to try to ruin that for somebody is just ugly. I don't understand it.
Yeah, and Steve and I were always surprised, like, the number of comedians we would have on our podcast that were like still Christian and still identified that way, but didn't talk about it much because they're like, I'm not going to talk about it in a green room. Like, people are going to fucking roast me, but you've made a space for me to talk about it here. And we would like just be finding out, and it's like,
what
it was
denomination
so
is Louis C.K.?
He was our favorite guest. We just made sure the Zoom camera stayed above his belt, and it was all fine.
Well, then he stood up, and it fucked everything up. Okay, I know we got to get you out of here, but I have one quick question for you about comedy, because we didn't even really talk about that and how you might have got into it, because I know it was a little bit later for you.
It's okay. It's been on 1 billion podcasts already.
So,
no worries.
My question that I was thinking about was, I feel like whenever you hear comics talk about pursuing it as like a real career, it's like there's like those milestones where you're like, all right, I'm working this like shit job for a while, and you finally are scraping by enough with comedy to be able to quit your day job. So that's like a big milestone. But what was the milestone that came next where you're just like, oh fuck, this is like a viable career? Like, was it like a moment? Was it like
I'm still waiting, man.
Come on, you're opening for Tom Segura.
I mean, I'm still scraping by, you know what I mean? But I can't complain about it because I do I am also choosing not to work any sort of day job. Do you know what I mean? I can't be like, oh no, it's so hard to only make money from live stand up right now because like I'm not on a TV show or whatever. And it's like I could just get a job, I'm choosing to keep scraping by a little bit just so I can 100% focus on it. But like at this specific time, it is my only income. It's just a little scary, it's like living club to club essentially, because it's like, what if you get sick? What if, I don't know, COVID happens?
That probably didn't help.
Or just a show cancels, or even like this weekend with Tom, like, yeah, I'll get paid well, but like I'm gonna see it in 2.5 weeks or whatever because he has a real business. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm walking out of the arena with a check. And so I'm still like middle class, but the fact that I am doing that, just telling jokes, is very funny to me. And my mom won't let me ever complain about it because she's just like, and she's very supportive, but she's like, oh no, you worked 45 minutes yesterday and and you feel like you're struggling. Oh, she's like, I only worked for people I hated for fucking 60 years. Like, then I retired January 2020. Like, couldn't go anywhere, She doesn't say it in such a shitty way, but I'll answer the question. I left my day job. I don't know, probably 5 years ago. I don't know what the milestone was. I think it was just that I was working enough and had enough opportunity that I felt like I could make it happen. But also, I honestly just felt like if I didn't make that leap, I wouldn't put 100% into it. And I think that's true a lot of the time. I'm not encouraging people to leave their jobs, but nobody wants to work anymore anyway.
Yeah.
It makes you hustle a lot harder when you don't have that steady check every 2 weeks and health insurance and everything, because you're like, it's like I just have to make it work.
Yeah.
Or I have to go back and get a regular job, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to work for people. The general milestones just that I thought like I was getting good have all been sort of one-to-one. It's like stuff like, opening for Tom, or going on the road with Wanda Sykes, like shit like that I'm like, these people that I think are at the top of this game like see something in me and think I'm good at it, and that enough is like a reminder that I might be okay at it. And then like working at the Comedy Cellar or like the Comedy Store, like these sort of things that I'm like, these are gatekeepers that are looking for one thing, and that's just like proficiency at stand up and the ability to make people laugh. It's not like what you look like. It's not that we think you can be a movie star. It's just like you are good at telling jokes and we want to pay you for that. That's always like sort of what my focus has been, because look, you can't like control any of the other shit, and this industry is sick, filled with pedophiles.
That's every industry, I guess.
So many parallels to Christianity now. That's so weird.
I know, right? And it's like they never even know what they want, so you can't put all your like wrap up all your identity in that stuff. I mean, also, if you're not getting the stand-up opportunities you want, you still have to remain strong and not trust one person's opinion. But it's this collection of things that I can look at and go like, okay, I think I'm good at this, like, and also objectively I know, because I like see people laugh in the room when I say stuff, and you just have to stay like very grounded in that way. And let's sort of go step by step. And so right now I have not made it by any means. I'm not like rich. I, still struggle with money. I like don't have much other work besides stand up right now, but I'm trying not to let that get me down. Like, it's just things come and go, and maybe eventually it'll happen. I'll be like that fucking Jessica Curson who's like, oh, I was 57 years old. She's not that old. And then finally someone noticed that I'd been doing this for a long time and being good at it. And then, some other money starts to come in. But I like doing it, so I'm not going to stop.
I think I'm glad I found your comedy, because I've very much enjoyed it. Your new comedy set. Well, is it new? Your Comedy Central special, Ham Mouth, was hilarious.
So good. It's really good.
Thank you.
Everyone
and to
should
take it
check
back
that out.
Just to end on Christianity.
Yeah.
I did. These are for some of the milestones that I focus on. Like, I do think about that, like, little Christian Amy, and go like, this is the wildest fucking future she could have imagined. She wouldn't have imagined it, because she would literally think like I'm a huge sinner and I need to get my life right. But as a kid, when my dad was still alive, like, I watched a lot of stand up with him, and so I knew it was something I liked and cared about. And it's just like, to be able to do that is so insane. But last week, speaking of the special, it's called Ham Mouth. You can watch it on YouTube. I don't read any of the comments. I'm trying to maintain my mental health. But my sister went and looked at them, and she was like, you should read like the first 50. It's like psychotic. They're all like really good. Like, I've never seen anything like this in a YouTube comment thread. But then there was one from a kid I went to church with, Michael Kirschbaum. Had a huge crush on him, but like, we grew up together, and he left a comment that was just like, oh, she's so amazing, I'm so proud of her. And he's like, this girl was so shy, like barely spoke, and just like studied and like loved Jesus. Like, the fact that she's doing this is so crazy, and I'm like so happy for her. And that just like made me cry. I was like, okay, that's what it's about. Like, fuck a TV show. It's like, this is, I love that.
That's awesome. Yeah, fuck a TV show. You're doing comedy. You have a special. You have an album. It's fine.
It's going fine. I'll let
As
you
far
know
as
if
I'm
I get
concerned, you've
booed on
made it.
Saturday.
There we
I
go.
mean, well, Amy, this was so much fun. Thanks so much for hanging out with us for the past hour and a half.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for doing this. I'm glad it's going on.
Hand Mouth on YouTube, and then where can people find you on social media?
Oh yeah, my Instagram's just Amy Miller Comedy. My Twitter's Amy Miller, and my website's amymillercomedy.com. I have a bunch of tour dates coming up if you want to come see me. That's it.
All right. Well, check those out, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.